Imagine looking up at the sky on a perfectly normal day. The sun is shining, birds are flying, traffic is moving, and people are going about their lives. Then, without warning, the sun disappears. Not explodes, not dims, not turns red. It simply vanishes for exactly 8 minutes. What would happen to Earth? Would we instantly freeze? Would the oceans turn to ice? Would humanity survive? The answer is far stranger than most people realize. To understand what would happen, we first need to remember something incredible. The sun is about 150 million kilometers away from Earth. Even though light travels at nearly 300,000 kilometers per second, sunlight still takes roughly 8 minutes and 20 seconds to reach us. This means everything we see from the sun is actually the past. When you look at the sun, you're seeing it as it was more than 8 minutes ago. So if the sun suddenly disappeared right now, nobody on Earth would notice immediately. For more than 8 minutes, everything would appear completely normal. The sky would remain bright, solar panels would continue generating electricity, plants would keep receiving sunlight, people would go about their day completely unaware that the most important object in our solar system no longer existed. Then, 8 minutes later, the final rays of sunlight reach Earth. The moment they pass, the entire planet is plunged into darkness. Not nighttime darkness, true daytime darkness. Every location currently facing the sun would suddenly lose all sunlight at once. Millions of people would stop and stare at the sky in disbelief. Streetlights would automatically switch on. Drivers would become confused. Phones would light up with messages as people desperately tried to understand what was happening. Social media would explode with panic, theories, and speculation. But darkness would only be the beginning. Something even more important would disappear at the exact same moment: the sun's gravity. According to Einstein's theory of relativity, gravity travels at the speed of light. This means Earth would continue feeling the sun's gravitational pull until the final sunlight arrives. When that last light disappears, so does the sun's gravity. For billions of years, Earth has been orbiting the sun because gravity constantly pulls it inward. Without that pull, Earth would stop orbiting instantly. Many people imagine Earth would be flung backward through space, but that's not what would happen. Instead, Earth would continue moving forward in a straight line at approximately 107,000 kilometers per hour. Imagine spinning a ball on a string. The moment the string breaks, the ball flies straight ahead. Earth would do the same thing. Fortunately, because the sun only disappears for 8 minutes, Earth wouldn't travel very far from its normal orbital path. When the sun reappears, its gravity returns as well, pulling Earth back toward its original orbit. The change would be extremely small. Most people would never notice any difference in Earth's movement. What about temperature? Movies often show planets freezing instantly when their star disappears. But reality is much less dramatic. Earth stores an enormous amount of heat, especially in its oceans. Even after sunset every evening, temperatures don't immediately collapse. During just 8 minutes without sunlight, the planet would barely cool at all. Most places might experience a temperature drop too small for people to notice. Oceans would remain liquid. Lakes would not freeze. Buildings would stay warm. Human beings would feel almost no direct temperature change. However, there would still be major effects across the planet. Solar power generation would instantly stop. Thousands of solar farms would suddenly lose their energy source. Electrical grids would have to compensate immediately. While most countries could handle such a short interruption, energy operators would be scrambling to understand what caused it. Astronomers would experience something extraordinary. For the first time in human history, stars would become visible during broad daylight. Normally, sunlight scatters through Earth's atmosphere and hides the stars from view. Without sunlight, the daytime sky would become dark enough to reveal countless stars, planets, and distant galaxies. Imagine standing outside at noon and seeing the Milky Way stretching across the sky. It would be one of the most beautiful sights ever witnessed by humanity. At the same time, wildlife around the world would become confused. Many animals rely on sunlight to regulate their behavior. Birds might suddenly stop flying and begin searching for places to sleep. Nocturnal animals could emerge early, believing night had arrived. Insects would alter their activity patterns. Entire ecosystems would react to this unexpected darkness. Plants would also respond immediately. Photosynthesis would stop because sunlight is required to convert energy. Fortunately, 8 minutes is far too short to cause lasting damage. Once sunlight returned, plants would continue functioning normally. Air travel would face unusual challenges. Pilots are trained to fly at night, but a sudden transition from bright daylight to darkness could still create confusion. Airports around the world would activate emergency procedures, while air traffic controllers work to ensure safe operations. Meanwhile, scientists would be racing to find answers. Observatories would point their instruments toward where the sun should be. Physicists would analyze incoming data. Governments would call emergency meetings. News organizations would provide nonstop coverage. Some people would assume the apocalypse had arrived. Others would search for scientific explanations. Conspiracy theories would spread at record speed. Then, exactly 8 minutes later, the impossible happens again. The sun reappears. Light instantly floods the planet. The sky turns blue. Shadows return. Solar panels resume generating electricity. Animals begin returning to normal behavior. Humanity collectively breathes a sigh of relief. The event is over, but its impact would last forever. Scientists would spend decades studying every detail of those 8 minutes. They would analyze tiny changes in Earth's orbit, investigate atmospheric responses, study animal behavior, and examine how global infrastructure reacted. It would become one of the most important scientific events in history, because humanity would have directly observed what happens when the light and gravity of a star suddenly vanish. Most importantly, those 8 minutes would remind us of something we rarely think about. Every meal we eat, every breath we take, every drop of rain that falls, every plant that grows, and every ecosystem on Earth ultimately depends on the sun. It powers our climate, drives our weather, fuels photosynthesis, and makes life possible. We often take the sun for granted because it rises every day without fail. But if it ever disappeared, even briefly, humanity would be reminded that our entire world depends on a giant star located 150 million kilometers away. And while 8 minutes would be frightening, survivable, and scientifically fascinating, a permanent disappearance would transform Earth into a frozen, lifeless world, drifting endlessly through the darkness of space.